Maybe we'll get the session started. Hello, everyone. Good evening to all the students in Hookham. My name is Raj Mahale. I'm the moderator. I too was an IB student back in the day. I graduated in 1993 with an IB and a poli-sci double major. And I'm currently the chair for the Center for Global Business. And I get back to Austin every so once in a while, since my folks still live in Austin. Anyway, we have a tremendous speaker today. How does someone who, being from an international business major at McCombs, becomes a leading chocolate importer? Our guest speaker for tonight is none other than Christophe Van Riet, and he's here to tell you more about, how he became who he is today and how he used the platform from UT days to what he's doing now. His family was in Texas, and Christophe came to Austin from Belgium in 1985. And he enrolled in the McCombs School of Business. He was so excited, and the main reason was because of the diversity from all over the world. He met folks from Texas to Tunisia to Turkey. To this day, he still keeps in touch with many of these friends that he met at UT. Christophe also knew that most of the students, like I did when I went, were accounting majors or finance majors, but he found himself very intrigued about international business. Initially, because of his proficiency in French and Dutch gave him a head start, but then the curriculum's flexibility and inclusion of everything from entrepreneurship to cultural courses really intrigued him, and that was the main reasons why he became an IB major. He graduated from UT with a BBA in international business in 1984, and subsequently I got an MBA from Emory University. After completing his education, Christophe started his career at Colgate-Palmolive in the global marketing program. The program gave him the opportunity to travel internationally and to also interface with multiple departments, and eventually became a brand manager. Later, he continued his career at Gillette, and he was in their international division. But in 1999, he had an epiphany. In the midst of the wave of the internet startups, he said, let me take a risk. And the risk he took, he jumped to start his own online business, which was back then in nascent stages, was direct-to-consumer shopping online, which was not heard of back in the time. And he had accolades from folks like Time Magazine and New York Times, et cetera, et cetera. And he realized that he was onto something. Today, Belgium Chocolate Source, which I'll talk about more, works with approximately 15 brands, including Mondelez International, which both owns Oreo and Sour Patch brand kids. Christophe credits his time at UT and his international business major for preparing both for his career in marketing and ultimately giving him confidence to pursue his own path. Without further ado, Christophe, the floor is yours, as they say.
All right. Thank you. What a nice introduction, Raj. Thank you very much. First of all, Hookham Horns. So nice to be all of you guys virtually and be back somewhat in Austin. I'm out of Boston here in Milton, Massachusetts. It's about 10 miles outside of Boston. I know you guys have much nicer weather right now than we have. In general, March is always very cold still, and no grass, no green grass, very yellow. But it's nice to connect with you guys out there in Texas, and I know I have a lot of very fond memories. When Raj asked me to talk a little bit about international business and majors, I do remember. In fact, I graduated in 1988, and I do remember that international business as a major was something that always was. What exactly is that? You had the finance and accounting, and these were straight shots for a job. Basically you got out in May, and in June you were sitting at your desk and you had a job in Dallas, Texas, or in Dallas or Houston or Austin with one of the big accounting firms or one of the big banks. So I have to commend you guys, because you're all going on a road that's less traveled, and obviously it's a road that is different, and it also allows you to think differently. I was thinking back, it's like everybody loves international, everybody loves traveling, everybody likes to go abroad. But I would say the accounting and the finance majors, they like to go somewhere in a resort in Mexico, sit by the pool and have a drink and know exactly when they have to leave to get back to the airport. And I think the international business majors are more adventurous, and they would actually go inside of the country and see the culture, see what's happening in the society, learn some languages, and basically do a road trip inside. So I think you guys are on a different mission and a different path, definitely a little bit more challenging. But at the same time, you chose for it because I think you like the idea of facing things that are not simple. You know, you don't have your typical 8 o'clock Starbucks coffee and you go into downtown Houston, sit by your desk and do accounting. You guys are in for other experiences. And I think people who really think internationally, whether it's going abroad and working there or dealing with international people, business opportunities, like to challenge themselves because things are always different, and it really is very good for your overall well-being because your brain basically likes to be in a routine, but at the same time, when it gets challenged all the time, it gets much more advanced. You have more understanding of the world, and it's really a very good way of looking at life moving onward. Engaging with other cultures, with other languages, is something you can do every single day in an IBA environment, you know, an international business, and you learn and you contribute to be part of this very large world. So I think it's, in my opinion, the better choice. But again, it's not for everyone. And that's why I think University of Texas is very unique because it gives, first of all, incredible business school. It's gotten much harder, I was telling Raj, than when I was out there back in the 80s. I don't know if I even would be able to get into the business school. It is an extremely great resource that you have on your resume. But at the same time, having that international business mindset, being an international student myself, gave me so much experience, both with the international community, the vibe back in Austin. Don't forget that you are in a very large university with a lot of people from all over the world. So that actually sets you apart from a lot of other people that are in business schools that don't have that access to that whole environment. And the other thing I wanted to say is that whatever you can do to actually mingle with the international student body, whether it is through an international business association or you know, setting up different cultural events, take advantage of it. Because I think at UT, I wish I maybe would have done even more of this, but you can make really lifelong relationships with a lot of very interesting people. Sometimes they say that, you know, in Harvard MBA degree, getting that is basically getting a Rolodex of very important people and very interesting people that you can deal with later on in your business life. But I feel at the University of Texas, you have so much access to all the international resources and people and students and professors that it really sets you again apart with being there.
Let me just add to that, Christophe. Yeah. I mean, you know, I've done a lot of global business as well. And, you know, what you said, our brand, the UT brand internationally is so strong. It's very amazing. I'll wear my UT hat and I get hookums from folks that, you know, right. they know the brand pretty well. So what you're saying is spot on. I mean, you can go to Harvard, but UT in itself has a definite brand in itself internationally. Yeah.
And I think also Texas, you know, Texas is a place not to be underestimated. You're in the center of a very, very large state with an enormous amount of international business going around. You know, business in Mexico, international business back with Asia. I think you're in a very good position to also use that type of resources. And I was thinking when, you know, thinking back of being there as a student, the pressure gets on when you're a senior and you're an international business major, you know, what are you going to do? Where do you want to go? Don't forget there's a very large alumni. I mean, there's very few schools that have such an alumni database of people all around the world. And there's a lot of University of Texas alumni, thanks to the fact that it's such a large university. But use those resources as well, because people, wherever they might be, whether it's in Korea or Japan or Turkey, you can reach out to people that are in these different countries that have been into the business school. It's just a database out there that is for you guys to access. And I know that alumni Longhorns are very resourceful and will always help out if being asked. I think also there's a lot of closeness with companies in Mexico, being in Texas as well, or Latin America. You have a big contingency that has to do with that. So I think using all these different opportunities on the campus definitely help you as well. It's a little bit more creative than having Deloitte and Touche come and interview, on a Thursday and getting a job the week later. But that's not what you guys are chose to do. So keep going for that. And I also mentioned ISEC. I don't know if most of you guys probably know ISEC, which I think back in my days was a really opportunity for getting a job abroad as an intern. So definitely use that opportunity because it has a lot of interesting people. It's basically an exchange program where people from Europe or Asia come to the US and you guys would go overseas as well. So I knew some people who were very much into the management, and it gives you so much opportunities, especially if you're looking for international opportunities for internships. Then the other thing I wanted to just briefly mention that I thought was really cool about being an IB student at UT is that you have that access to all these courses. So some of my favorite courses were international business law. Obviously, I did the international finance, the standard IB courses that are given. But you also have opportunities to learn another language in UT. There's a lot of languages being given, even Dutch. That when I was out there at UT, I could actually take Dutch courses and place out of them on the same day and get credit for it, which is really, I don't think they do this anymore. But it was an easy way to get a lot of foreign language on my resume and on my credits. But again, languages, and then also I remember there's so many interesting history and geography courses. So if you have a certain interest in, whether it's Asia or Europe, think out of the box and take some general social studies courses in the history department or geography department, because they really have incredible opportunities to do that. Again, it differentiates yourself from all these other typical majors that are much more cookie cutter. You also have the Latin American Studies department, which even though you're not a major or so, you can take courses there, and extremely rich courses that can later on, if you go in a certain direction with an international business degree, you can talk about that. You can tell, hey, I had these incredible focused courses, and that made me a different person.
Yeah, so Christophe, we talked about this earlier when we were preparing for this. I too felt the same way about the curriculum and the courses. Did that help you sort of take those risks from you being part of corporate America to pivot to what you're doing now? Did it help you set that up, or made you think more globally? If you can, share some more insights on that, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, no, I think it gave me a little bit more of a global perspective, having been in the IB major, being involved every single day. We had an international strategy course with the computer simulation program, which I really enjoyed, and every single day thinking about what's happening in the world internationally. And basically, I would argue all business is international in a way. But you really have a focus on that. I mean, I would read the Wall Street Journal every single day, and everything you read there actually comes back into your coursework. And I think later on, when I went from the corporate world back into more of an entrepreneurial role, I remember that everything, all the things that I learned kind of come back and gel. So it gives you the confidence as well of being, hey, I know I've studied international business. There's, whether it's international finance or business law, all these different courses. So I think it gives you a certain feeling of confidence. Absolutely.
So what made you pivot? What made you, after undergrad and then eventually your MBA, you worked for some large Fortune 500 companies. So you took that leap of faith, as they say. And so tell us more about that and what was the analysis and the thought process?
Right. Yeah, I was very much a marketing person. So I really liked brands and followed companies like Procter & Gamble and Unilever. Back at the University of Texas, Frito-Lay was a big recruiter. They came with different internships. There were also some computer companies like Dell Computers that would be recruiting. But my focus was really on consumer goods. I loved brands. I loved everything that had to do with marketing. And typically, back in the 80s, there was a lot of the typical big guys were the Procter & Gamble's, the Coca-Colas of the world that would hire different marketing people for consumer goods, General Mills as well. So I kind of had an interest in being into consumer goods, and I wanted to go into the larger companies, the corporations. So after I graduated, I was recruited. I actually sent out about 100 resumes. At that time, you still had to print them out on beautiful cranes, paper, stationery, and mail them with a stamp. And I sent out about 110 was my goal. And I got about a couple responses, but 2 actual offers, which was amazing. And I think ultimately you only need 1 offer. That is good. I tell that to my kids as well. When you go out and you want to get your resume out, get as many touch points of companies that you enjoy and would like to work with. Now it's much easier with LinkedIn and with everything online. It's much easier to put your resume in. But bottom line, out of the 100 resumes that were sent out and solicitation letters, there were 2 offers that came back. One was with Colgate-Palmolive back in New York City, and they offered a global marketing training program for someone who had studied international business, who had some language skills, and had shown a lot of interest in that. And then there was also a job with Coca-Cola back in Atlanta. And I ended up choosing for Colgate-Palmolive and started the program there together with about 15 other young students. They all came from different universities, all had international business interest, backgrounds, and language skills. And some were international, but there were mostly Americans that started in that marketing position. So together with these 12, 13 other recruits, went on a training program and actually had a lot of opportunity to deal with different marketing departments in launching international products. I mean, the way a Colgate or a Procter & Gamble is focused is that you really become a brand manager, so you own the brand. They also mostly have an international department where that same brand, let's say Oreo cookies, for instance, or in my case, it was Colgate toothpaste or toothbrushes, that there's an international team that actually helps launch the different new innovations and products and new packaging worldwide. So they liked my background because I had some international languages. And again, I had shown a lot of interest and I was really focused on marketing. It was something I loved to do. I was very passionate about it. And I like to work on it. I like to live and breathe everything. At that time, I would go to every single grocery store and pharmacy to see where the Colgate was. And whenever I went abroad on on a trip, I would want to see how the Colgate looked in the different countries. So I was really passionate, a little bit too indoctrinated, but you know, that's part of the marketing mindset. And so having worked at Colgate, they sent me to a couple of different international assignments. One was in Romania. This was back in the late 80s. US companies, multinational companies were buying a lot of different factories in Eastern Europe. In fact, there was no Colgate toothpaste in Romania back in 1986. So Colgate basically bought a factory and converted all the machinery into the Colgate brand. So that was very exciting to do. And then also a couple of other assignments internationally with the different departments that I worked on. What I found so interesting is that you meet so many interesting people. Every single person you touch or you deal with is different. You know, it's not like the cookie cutter person that you grew up with. People speak different languages, have different understandings. And that is just so fun to learn and assimilate and have this. And I think by having an international business major, you've expressed that that is really what you like to do in your life. You know, you don't want to be dealing every single day with similar, you know, cookie cutter, and you like to appreciate the differences. And I think also, you know, you probably have a mindset of being a global citizen and not just say, hey, I'm from, you know, Galveston or I'm from El Paso. It really is, I'm someone who lives in this world and I can think for everything in a global way. So,
and you pick up different cultural nuances and how business is done.
Yeah.
And as a lawyer, there's different ways of, you know, there's different legal systems around the world that you have to also work with. So it's very fascinating.
Yeah. And I think by thinking that way, you have a certain sense of trust. I mean, you might have seen that when you meet someone, and if you even give an effort or take an effort of speaking a few, you know, words in a foreign language, suddenly the whole barrier comes down and people are like, hey, this is a good person, you know, this person is access. So I think the trust, the respect, and then the understanding is really big. And that's part of your degree that you come out of the school with that type of understanding. So having worked at Colgate-Palmolive, which I really enjoyed, again, living in New York was for me a dream, you know, having access to all these different places. Eventually, I got an offer to move to Boston and work for the Gillette company. It was a promotion for me, and became a marketing manager on a pen division, which at that time they owned Parker Pen, Waterman, and Papermate. And I was in charge for Parker Pens, which is an old-fashioned, you know, typical writing instrument, which at that time still was a sizable business all around the world. And again, I was in the marketing, the international division there for launching different pens. So what is interesting is once you're in that marketing environment, the corporate marketing environment, you know, you can move around to different companies that are in this consumer goods because they look for people from different companies. So you get recruited and you have that opportunity as well. Having worked then for Gillette, again, there was some international travel with it because, again, we were launching on a global scale. And it really was a very interesting opportunity to learn all the different aspects of product management and marketing. And like you mentioned, Rash, back in 2000, or actually with 1998, there was suddenly a gold rush into the internet business. Everybody wanted to start a online retail operation. Needless to say, half of the people couldn't even download all the images on your website, you know, on your cart. But a lot of people actually said, you know, kids your mall goodbye, everything is going to shift online. And clearly there was such a rush that this whole .com bubble burst about 4 or 5 years later. But I was reading about it and I thought maybe that is something I really would like to do, is start my own, you know, business where we would import the best chocolates from Europe, from Belgium specifically, and sell them only online, only through different partnerships and online. And so it was an idea that started to gel. I went to, I took the train every single day into downtown Boston to work for Gillette. And there was a summer where I just couldn't hold it anymore. I'm like, I have to do this. I have to do this. And, I prepared a little bit. I wrote a business plan. And I said, I know how to do pricing and promotions and importing and logistics, and thinking that I could do all this because having seen it in these large corporations, had that epitome that you said, like where I really thought this was going to happen. And that fall, I started all on my own, and it started off by a couple boxes of chocolate that were brought in by plane into the airport in Boston, from Belgium to Boston. And we had a decent season. There were people ordering it. We had corporate gifts, and there was, decent sales. And then January came after my first holiday season, and suddenly there was no more sales. And we're like, what's going on? I got to go back to corporate world. I have to, this is not going to happen. But strangely enough, suddenly when you are in this entrepreneurial spirit, you like to try to find where can I find business? You're forced to think, you got to build your market. And suddenly the answer for me became that suddenly stores, the exact retailers that everybody was saying, everybody's going to go away with stores, everybody's going to go online. Stores were buying so much more and such more. They were asking me, can you bring this in? Can you import that product? Can you get this special chocolate into our stores? So we quickly veered, and that's the other thing that's important as an entrepreneur, is quickly be able to be flexible and look for new courses of action, and went into really wholesale. So it became a B2B business, and the first year was still fairly small, importing everything by plane and in boxes. But after 2-3 years, suddenly we were able to get a container. A container contains 40 pallets of chocolate, so that's quite a bit. And having built the business more and more, suddenly I had suppliers in Europe, chocolatiers and chocolate companies, who came to me and said, hey, would you want to represent our brand? Would you want to import it? And so suddenly it became bigger and bigger, to the point that we now have a nice portfolio of different brands, and we can actually bring in containers every 2-3 weeks all the way from Europe. So just to say that, again, I felt after having left Gillette and having been in Colgate, I felt I had the structure. I saw a lot of things. And to this day, a lot of the everyday business analysis, business charts we do are very similar to what I did back at Colgate or at Gillette. Or forecasting models, they are exactly the same thing. So what you learn in business school, you put into corporate world or in the typical business environment, you take that back even in an entrepreneurial environment. We still deal with cash flow and accounting and finance and sales analysis, things that we really did back as a student.
That's wonderful. So Christophe, you mentioned curriculum. Do you recommend our students to do internships and get more involved, and even if they're pursuing like graduate degrees, maybe get some work under their belt to see the world?
I think absolutely. I think ultimately, whatever you can do in the summer. When I was at UT, I remember several of my friends got internships in finance, but one guy went to Japan. He ended up working for 3-4 weeks out there in Japan, kind of on a training program. Whatever you can do to build that resume, having been abroad, even if it's like for 1 month, and even if they don't pay you anything or pay you minimal, you don't write your internship salary on your resume. But the fact that you've shown that you've been abroad, that you did this, that you have had experiences, let's say you worked in Monterrey, Mexico for a US factory, and did an analysis over the summer. I would say anything you can do to go abroad as an international business major is bonus. It's bonus. Even if it's learning, getting some languages and learning some languages. All these are touch points that will help you on your resume and help you in your story when you approach those recruiters after you graduate. And I do think, graduate school is great, but nothing is better than having that life experience first, because ultimately you will take the same business courses again for an MBA or so, and it's better to do that after you've had a little bit of chance to work. I also think that these days it's technology and tech companies offer so much opportunity as well for you guys. First of all, you don't necessarily need to be in San Francisco to work for a technology company. So you can be in anywhere. And at the same time, they all want to expand internationally. So they all need people who are committed and have vision to help them go into the big wide world. The digital evolution also can help you. I think a lot of these companies, if I think back like what summer internships or what opportunities you might have with companies, is that you guys are so tech savvy, and helping with technology to communicate internationally is so powerful. I can only imagine that a lot of the US companies want to have kind of some type of digital presence to communicate internationally, worldwide. And that's where you guys can come back with a lot of interesting feedback, even if it's a small summer internship.
Yeah, so Christophe, that's a good point you just raised. I mean, we're talking about international focus and the opportunity to go abroad. And I know, when I was in undergrad, we didn't have those opportunities as much as they are now. I have 2 kids in college, and the amount of opportunities that they have to go abroad is awesome. Mm-hmm. But you said something that kind of resonated with me and maybe with others. There's other paths as well. If you don't have the opportunity to go abroad, the digital route, the technology route is a valuable asset as well. Can you expound a little bit further on that and your thought process? Because I see how they can marry the two. It closes the gap as well.
Yeah, no,
especially
absolutely.
Since you were one of the first movers using e-commerce.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of actually technology companies that come even in the US from abroad. And there's I'll give you a quick example. My daughter graduated with an international studies degree, and she did a digital kind of an internship during the COVID years with a company called RepTrak. RepTrak is a big Danish-based company that tracks reputations of companies all around the world. She did a small program with them. She worked for a couple of weeks, did some analysis, but she was able to put that on her resume. And now she has a job in New York City with a digital tech firm called Apple Cart that actually rates and does digital targeted marketing. So very advanced. And she told me the other day, she's like, you know what, Dad, there was one sentence on my resume that said RepTrak, and that I did a little small internship there. And that was enough for them to start quizzing me about it and saying, hey, you work for RepTrak? So again, the idea is to put a name of a company that is relatable, that is technology that you can talk about in your talking points when you go and go for recruitment. And again, the same thing with kind of what I did, which is once you graduate, go for a larger company that has an interesting name and has a good reputation that can bring you to the next level.
What are your thoughts, Christophe, about, we were talking to a different generation. They're very eager. I think they're super smart, much more smart than I was. I'm surprised I even got into UT, to be honest, like you. But,
me too.
Yeah, but it's the digital age, correct? And then these kids are becoming more and more entrepreneurial. They want to start up their own companies. You just mentioned something about joining some of the larger firms. Is it because a lot of startups are popping up left and right? Do you think they'd get more out of working for a more stabilized Fortune 1000 or so company, public or private, than to join a startup right away, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think the world has changed a lot. Back in the late 80s, you had your typical 150 companies that came to the University of Texas recruiting, and everybody kind of knew when they were coming and who they wanted to be with. Now you're talking about internships or jobs with startups, and I think it is just very fascinating. And you have much more flexibility to move from one company to another. If the startup doesn't work well, you have the skills. I think what I would say is, if you go that route, find a place that will give you the proper training and give you a lot of interesting backgrounds, so that you are not just on a limb, trying a startup and with people who don't know what they're doing, but you learn different skills from it.
So what you're basically saying is, if you do decide to go the startup route, make sure strategically it's an environment where you're learning skills and advancing your skill sets, where they'll be transferable not only to potential other startups, but to sort of the brick and mortar, as they say, to go back, right?
That's what I would say. Because if it's a startup that just is dead in the water, you almost have to make a decision, right? Is this startup the one that I think, for the next 3-4 years will be making a lot of inroads, which is hard to do. But you kind of want to go somewhere, especially if you come out of college, to a place that has some training and has some background. And there's a lot of tech startups that do offer a lot of interesting things to learn.
Is there other ways our IB students can differentiate themselves that you can think of outside the box? Because you and I went through the same thing. I had friends who are finance majors, and as I mentioned to you in preparation of this call, MIS was very hot back in my era, and my friends that were MIS majors were just being plucked. Yeah. And so, is it a combination of perhaps curriculum, opportunities to go abroad, if you can work in an environment, even if it's a digital platform, to work from home, from your dorm room or your apartment? Do you suggest those routes?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, anything you can do to build your resume, even if it's skills that, that especially I'm thinking back of technology, being able to design, being able to communicate things internationally, digitally, is going to become more and more important. I think also networking, more than, your typical finance or accounting person who can go back to the hometown where they grew up and work for an accounting firm or a law firm, having a network of people. So network with the people around you right now. You have Korean students, you have Japanese students, you have probably a few Frenchmen who are in the business school, and try to make these, these networks also in a social setting. So take advantage of that. Again, as I mentioned, the languages and the other courses that are out there. You guys have an incredible amount of interesting courses. So if you have an interest in space exploration, there's space, courses that you can take at UT, whatever you want. Try to use those, and then those professors and those people and those guys, the counselors, because that is something that I feel like maybe I might have not have taken as much advantage of as I should have. And don't forget that recruiting office that's still there, right? The career management office, because that is basically your database, your library for people, for access to different opportunities out there. Yes. But again, the other thing that has become probably much simpler for everybody versus our time, Raj, is the fact that you can find so much information online. You can do your own little research, all just from your fingertips, in terms of who is hiring, what companies are out there, and just keep thinking about the international angle, what is out there.
No, thanks for that. So just going back to your business and your business model, maybe you can spend, a few more minutes about that. I mean,
Yeah.
you took the leap of faith. You thought at one point, maybe this is not right for me, and you pushed on. And as they say, it's not just it's skills. You get some lucky breaks that go your way.
Yeah.
What sort of kept you in focus, the fortitude to say, hey, I need to try, I need to pivot a little bit. Maybe I'm not doing something right. Working for these big firms, the curriculum build you to that, to say, let me push on a little bit further, because you knew based on the education that you had and the skills that you obtained working for these big corporations, you can always go back, as they say, working for the man or woman these days. So I shouldn't say that. It's not politically correct anymore. Yep. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it is a scary idea to do the entrepreneurial route, especially if you're in the corporate America and people don't think about it that way. But eventually I found my fold, and I think a lot of it has to do with hard work and persistence. I think any new business that you start, any entrepreneurial angle, you will have to work hard. You will have to, nothing comes easy, and you're gonna have to continue to be dedicated on it. I was lucky to have some of these background skills like forecasting and a lot of the things you learn actually as a business major. Because you're not making too many mistakes. You can read a balance sheet, you can do the cash flow, what it's all about on supply and demand and economics. So I felt like I had some of that background to keep going, but it was also persistence. And then eventually, as per when you keep focusing on something and you believe in it, you say, hey, this has to work. The supply and demand. I can bring chocolates and make and sell them for a profit in the US. Eventually you fine tune and you find a model that works. And then that becomes your full focus. So I would say, if you make that leap into entrepreneurship, one is hard work, and then also keep focusing.
So Christophe, thank you. We have a lot of questions coming in from the students. Would you mind taking a few?
Sure, absolutely.
I appreciate it. I know we have about 15, 20 minutes left, but these are some, these students are just bright. One student, so do you have anything a specific moment in your career that you can recall that was significantly rewarding? You said, aha, this is a great accomplishment. Great question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the rewarding was when there was profit in my own company. I could suddenly set up a 401k and feed everybody and make sure. So no, basically having a company that's profitable. Eventually you get the trust as well from your suppliers. So, but because basically I was an unknown entity, right? So I had to buy everything from these different companies abroad who were making chocolate, and they're like, there's some guy in America who's going to import our stuff, and what is he going to mean for us? So getting that trust and that respect, and suddenly being a qualified importer, paying your bills correctly to them, and
thank you.
That made a big difference. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Another question for you, sir. What was the most difficult part about doing business abroad?
Yeah, the most difficult thing is obviously you have the typical challenges with currency fluctuations. If suddenly the euro goes up again versus the dollar, suddenly my profit is lower. So that can be very challenging. We had some supply challenges, like a lot of different companies had the past couple of years. It seems like everything is calming down again. So containers that suddenly became twice as expensive. So these are all little small hardships. But I think ultimately the most challenging thing is having good people who work for you, and finding these people and keeping them. Because whenever we have someone that, someone retires or something, that is always like a big challenge. So I think working with people and having good people is very rewarding, but can also be very difficult if you don't have the right people helping you out.
Oh, sure. More great questions. I'm telling you, these students are extremely bright. What are the biggest upcoming opportunities you see in your industry, and what do you see in the moment, and what the future look for your company? Where are you going with your company?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a very, very good question because on the one hand, I see more and more international business. At the same time, there's also a lot of insourcing. If you think back about 20 years ago, before Starbucks really exploded, the US market didn't have a good coffee, coffee category or coffee business. Maybe it's already 25 years ago. Suddenly Starbucks comes in. A lot of US companies have developed very good coffee brands. Same thing in the chocolate business. So while I'm an importer, so I have to bring stuff in from different countries and make it, tell them that these are better products. There's a lot of new trends that say think global, but also go local, work with local manufacturers. There's a lot of good chocolate brands in the United States. In the past 10 years, there's been an explosion of very good brands. So the challenge here is how do you stay relevant and keep that international business going for years to come. And the interesting thing that I would say is there's always going to be interest in new things, and there's always going to be interesting innovations, new technology, new ideas going all around the world that can be brought back to the US. So I definitely see a future for international business. I think for you guys, the digital revolution with artificial intelligence and everything suddenly made everything even more easy to communicate, to bring things in from all over the world. And it's actually very exciting. So
piggybacking off of that, another student asked, for you, they're interested in the import-export business, right? Mm-hmm. And for you, coming from Belgium and having that background, there's a natural affinity maybe. They're asking, do you stay in your lane? Do you if you're going to start an import-export business, do you focus on a sector that you're familiar with, like you did, or would you advise them to branch out?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good question too. I think at this point, I kind of have a lifestyle brand company. We know every single year we're going to bring in that much. We grow, not double digit, double digit, but not doubling our business every single year. So we kind of have a routine going. The bills are paid. We know how to deal with the suppliers. Our cash flow is under control. So that there's something to be said to be in that situation. There's other companies, other people, especially when you're younger and you have more risk, less risk averse, that you can actually work on different angles and import different products. So I think we became more focused as the business became more stable, but I would say open up to a lot of opportunities, and I would not be afraid of starting two businesses if you say, hey, there's two different opportunities that can work with, and maybe there's some synergies to do that.
That's great. Thank you for that. What about we talked about language skills, and you talked about language that you took at UT and I took as well. How do you recommend showcasing that? Back in the day in our resumes, I remember sending them out the language. This is what we can speak. But how do you differentiate yourself? Would you recommend to future employers to send writing samples or showcasing something that we've done abroad and speaking in those languages? Is there something, that angle that will help them?
I think a lot of companies in the days of Colgate-Palmolive, when they recruited, they recruited people from the Czech Republic or someone from Morocco. And the idea was, if they speak a second language, they're adept to learn a third language. So they would bring an executive in and say, oh, you can go to Bulgaria. That person might not know Bulgarian overnight, but will have capabilities to get some language, a little bit of words, be able to speak in the factory with the people on the floor. So the idea that someone who speaks a second language or a third language is much more in tune to learn a third language or even a foreign language, foreign language that is not usually spoken. So I definitely would flout it. I would definitely, if you have language skills, talk about it. Yes, Google Translate can translate every single document right now, but at the same time, it shows a certain intellect. And they've done brain studies over the years that anyone, young person learning a second language has a different way of thinking about grammatics and actually enhances overall your brain power. So by all means, even if it's a hobby or even if it's language is not very common, tell people about it, because it shows that you have something else that other people don't have.
No, thank you. Another great question. I'm trying to get them all in, students, so I apologize. When you did struggle the most during your journey, what specific moment did you realize everything was worth it? It's a great question.
That is these are very good questions. Of course, it's also lifestyle. When you have a family and kids, and then at one point you have to be stable. You can't be starting a startup and come home and say, well, I just lost all my investment and everything I spent the last 5 years. So it feels very rewarding when you know that you have a stable business, and that it cannot necessarily, that it's not going to go down with big losses and so on. So I think when you start a small business, I personally am a little bit maybe old school, but I believe, especially now with the technology and what everything you have, you can start a business with bootstrap financing. So you don't need to go out and think, oh, I got to start a business in the future and I really need a lot of money. In fact, most businesses work best if they are very bootstrapped in the beginning. Eventually you get demand, and then people will say, hey, we'll give you money to grow your business. But digitally, you can look almost as good as a corporation, sometimes even better, because the Mondelez and the Procter & Gamble's of the world, they don't have time to really update their website and look very professionally. But right now you can do a tremendous amount of stuff just digitally to your consumer or whoever is going to take in your product. So I think that's rewarding, that you can look as good as a very large company. And I feel every single day I do a lot of similar things that I did maybe at Gillette and at Colgate, but it's fun to know that it's your own business.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for that response. So as I mentioned to you earlier, we have now a lot of minors that are international business. And we've opened that up. We didn't have that back in the day. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm a non-international business major, but I'm a minor, how do I prepare to work abroad or get an overseas opportunity to pursue these opportunities? Or do you take more international business classes? What do you recommend for people that are not international business majors?
Yeah, but if you're a minor, you're probably a major in finance or a major in marketing or a major in accounting. I think there's definitely also in finance, finance is international, honestly. Everything is to do with what's happening in the world. But again, it shows that you have that extra interest, that extra step in going and pursuing that. And you just need to push yourself a little bit more in selling that and marketing that to your potential recruiter or what you're going to do later on in life. But I think it's almost like a stamp that you put on your resume. If you say international business, this is my interest, eventually you will get there. Your career path will flow that way. You will not be happy being an accountant in Plano, Texas, and going every single day with your car to the office, Zoom calls or whatever, and stay just in Plano for the rest of your life. There's much out there. There's a lot out there. And I would say, if you have no inspiration, open up the Wall Street Journal or Fortune magazine and just read some of these very fascinating and think of it all internationally. And the other thing is, there's so much going on in the world. Everybody needs good people. Everybody needs good people, whether they're entry level or, and if you show commitment and interest in someone, you'd be amazed what it means when you say, I really researched your company and I really know all about this, and I'm so fascinated by it, because suddenly, people don't get emails all the time from potential people wanting to work for you. So
No, that's again, thank you for that. I have a couple more here. So what are, from your experience, what are some of the most common misconceptions or perceptions held by recent, American grads when they're interacting with international customers or partners?
yeah, I think honestly, American businessmen have come a long way. It used to be, a big company like a Unilever, or let's say an American company like Procter & Gamble would send out their managers, they call them expats. That expat from Cincinnati had to go to Venezuela to manage that subsidiary. Those days are gone. The Procter & Gamble says, well, no, we have very good people that went to the University of Texas and are from Venezuela. We'd like to put someone from Venezuela or someone from Argentina or someone from Mexico. So there's not that mindset of that big American who knows everything and will tell the whole world how to do business. So I think ultimately Americans have become more of a global citizen, global business person, and they are leading in a lot of different categories. So I think keeping, staying humble and respecting. Respect is a big word, especially in international business, because people always want respect. Just ask Putin, no one, he doesn't get any respect, and it's hurting him. So just to say that worldwide, people, the two things they want is respect and not being humiliated. So if you can
That's a
keep
great
that
response.
yeah,
That's a great response. Thank you, Christophe. I'm gonna fit in two more. I apologize. It's like rapid fire going on.
right.
So one student asked, you're talking about international experience. What was your favorite one that impacted you the most, a country or a company that stood out to you that said, oh, wow, this was quite amazing?
Huh. One of the favorite things I do is go to these trade shows internationally. There's a big show in Germany every single year where people from all over the world come with all their candy companies, from Brazil to Japan to, of course, a lot of Belgians are there. So a lot of my suppliers. What I really love is seeing all these things and seeing all that success and interesting entrepreneurial ideas and concepts that are breeding and meeting with all these entrepreneurs. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's very rewarding to be able to belong in that environment and knowing that you're in this international global environment.
No, it's awesome. Okay, well, maybe one, maybe two, but let's try this one. In what skill sets have you found that you've grown the most from working in such an international role? What skill sets that you honed in on that you can expound on?
Yeah, I mean, in my business, it's a lot of it has to do with sales. Is to selling is basically communicating with people and building a trust and making sure that the economics work. You sell something, you buy something, and there's profit. So I think I've become good at it. A lot of people say, follow your passion, but if you do something and you work hard on it and you keep getting better and better, then ultimately you find that success. And so I would say if you have a certain skill set, keep working at it, make it better and better. If you're a good writer or you're a good strategist, and eventually that really will give you so much rewards just by focusing on a very good skill. In my case, it was like really selling and marketing.
Well, thank you for that. And I'll put one last one in.
You guys have a lot of questions.
First of all, students, you're awesome.
Yeah.
I couldn't get to all these questions. Flooded. So thank you so much. And this was so exciting for me as a moderator. Absolutely. To see this response from you guys. Last question would be, was there a certain situation that you ran across that it was a cultural difference or something that was combative or something that you had to deal with, and how did you resolve it? Being part of this globalized world and interacting with different personalities and cultures
Right.
and so on and so forth that
Yeah,
stands
yeah.
out, and how did you handle that, if at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Belgium, but I even to this day, sometimes some of my suppliers, some of the Belgians will not be as upfront or will not be as open as an American business person. I feel like I'm more of an American business person now, where you're like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's not hide things, and let's not, if it's not good, let's talk about it. So I feel that culturally, sometimes that was a little bit of an adjustment, that they will not be as open, but I'll get them out of their shell anyway. So we'll go and say, hey, what's going on? Why are you not talking back? Or especially with international business, you can ignore emails or not respond. It's not as easy as it used to be, but sometimes you find these cultural things quite amusing. But
That's awesome. Thank you.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And again, I apologize to all the students. There's several more questions that I don't know. Can we fit in one or two more, or have we hit our time limit?
I'm okay with that. You can also email any questions.
Sure, absolutely. I think maybe Deborah can or Jordana can facilitate that if you're open to that.
Hi, everybody. We'll pop Christophe's email into the chat, provided he's not, going to object to getting a whole lot of questions by email.
Right. That's okay. That's fine.
You're free to keep chatting if you would like. The Zoom link will be on as long as you want it, but I understand that talking for more than an hour can be a bit of a long ride. So
this is a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun, guys.
Thanks so much.
I wish I was there now.
Yeah, well, thank you, Christophe. Thank you so much for your time.
No.
Thank you, students. We'll wrap it up here for now. And then if you don't mind sharing your email, they can, some of the folks that we couldn't get to, they can send you emails directly. That's okay.
Sounds good. Excellent.
All right.
Well, you guys,
thank you all.
Hook 'em horns, and wish everybody a lot of success. I'm envious, as I said to Raj. It's so exciting for you guys to be on this path, and don't ever question the international business path, because I think it's really a very fascinating and adventurous, and it's only going to get more and more international globally. So good job.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your time.